Was Éamonn Cregan like ahead of that final? I know you've often said he was a quiet man. Around an All-Ireland final, would the emotion get the better of him?
Oh, absolutely not. No, Éamonn Cregan he appeared to us emotionless, but I guess he wasn't. Everyone has their different personas. But in front of us, I suppose, no. Really interesting cameo was, obviously, he was a great Limerick man and would be considered one of the great hurlers at the time. And in Limerick, they considered him one of their greats. But Derry O'Donovan was his physical trainer. Derry would have been very close to us. And he would have been kind of the conduit between Cregan and us on a level where we could chat, you know, and we'd kind of always try and get deep into find out his psychic, and we'd be saying, Derry, what's he really like? What's he really like? Because they're pally to this day. But Derry often told me that when we left the dressing room that day, Cregan gave a speech, and everyone was left, and the selectors left, and the only two in the dressing room left were Cregan and Derry, two Limerick men. And Derry took a look at him and he went, snap out of it. He said, there's two teams gone out there today and you know which one you're with. Because the cameras went on him when we won. And he was like, devastated. Like, and we were kind of, get over yourself, like, you know, you're with us. But that's the type of man he was. He was a very stoic type of gentleman. And that was it. I mean, the National League was played in October back then, and we played Waterford in the first game, and we were beaten them by a cricket score at half-time. And Cregan came in, and he ate us over our All-Ireland performance. We didn't deserve it, and he only hurled for a few minutes, and if you think that's great... I remember Martin Hannamy going, you know, is there no pleasing this guy? Get over it, like, we won, get over it. But to him it was the performance. He was a purist, a real purist, and he hated that we had won the way we won. Playing rubbish for the bulk of the game and getting over the line. You know, he
Which
wanted
is often just what All-Ireland is in a final.
Well, All-Ireland finals, a lot of them, I know you guys are unique in that you've won them well from well out, but a lot of All-Irelands go to the wire. And they're not purists games, you know, you have to dog them out. But he was a purist, and that's the way he was as a hurler.
Do you think his reaction at the full-time whistle was that frustration of this team I've dedicated myself to over the past year haven't performed the way I would have wanted on the biggest day? Or was it that he
No, it was Limerick. It was Limerick. But I have to say, and I have great respect for the man, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way to him. I never believed that. Many will probably say, yeah, I always believed he played it well. You know, that he didn't want to be seen to be euphoric after the final whistle went. And I never bought into it, because he was in Limerick and he coached them a couple of times, and he wasn't like the flavour of the month down there. They wouldn't have rated him like we would. We'd have rated him the best we ever had. But in Limerick they didn't. And you know the way sometimes you keep it within, but privately you're going, that really showed them. And I always kind of thought that, because he's such a winner, and as a golfer, I've never played with him, but boys would tell me that as a golfer he's so competitive, and that's the way he was in his life. I think privately he was thrilled. You'd have to be as a manager. You know, he brought a team from nowhere to win in All-Ireland. Unless he's cold.
I suppose being from Limerick, he didn't want to rub it in their face, you know.
Fair point. Fair point, yeah.
There is that side as well, like, yeah. At the moment, like, he had to go back down there, he had to live there, he didn't want to be creating enemies by celebrating a Limerick defeat.
Yeah.
Was he the perfect character to coach that Offaly team?
Oh, he was, yeah.
Because if he was emotionless, you weren't, and it was a fairly wild bunch that actually he never got overly carried away with it.
Oh, he was absolutely the right man. I remember I was repping for Beamish and Crawford when he got the job in '93. Limerick or Kilkenny, we'd had marvellous battles with Kilkenny from '89 when I came on, and we had hammered Kilkenny in '89, hammered Kilkenny in '90, '94, '95, and in '91 Dublin beat us, '92 and 3 Kilkenny beat us. '93 they won the All-Ireland and just got over the line against us. John Power, DJ got a penalty with 2 minutes to go. So like, we knew we had a good side. We'd won 3 minors in 4 years. We'd lost the 3 under-21 correspondent finals. So we knew we were. And our county board deserved great credit, huge credit, because they looked at the bunch and went, there's something here, but we need a disciplinarian with them. So he was the right fit. There's no doubt he was the right fit, and he was an absolute disciplinarian. Within a year I was jettisoned off the panel. Roy Mannion was gone off the panel. I was blessed in '94 to be brought back on because I played a couple of good club games. Mannion he never touched again, and he would have been second to Brian Wheelahan as the most skillful player in 20 years we had in Offaly. He was that good, and we besieged the county board behind Cregan's back. We need him, but he crossed him once, and that was it. And like, we couldn't afford to be losing players in Offaly, but that was it. He was a disciplinarian, and I remember when I was dropped and I got back on in '94, I never crossed him again. for as long as he was there.
That can really go either way. Like, someone comes in and tries to stamp their authority. If there's a backlash from the players, and you've seen it in every sport and recently in the GA as well, like, if they do try to put their stamp on it, players can kind of put up a resistance against it, and then it all just goes flat. You see,
we needed it at the time, and we knew we needed it.
Yeah.
And it was a different, like, you know, coming from where we were coming from, we were a different kind of bunch. Not saying we were better or any worse than what followed, and teams with strong characters who went, no, we don't want this manager because we wanted him, and we knew we needed him.
Yeah.
Like, we'd have been very, very quick to turn on ourselves. We actually weren't very quick to turn on other managers. I know the issue with Babs when he went at the time, but, like, I mean, the first people we'd have pointed our fingers at were ourselves.
And that shows a lot of
We
maturity.
never had a problem doing that, and Whelan would never have been afraid, and I heard on my club with Brian Whelan, never been afraid to point a finger at me or Pilkington or someone else and go, you're acting a B, you know, and in front of everybody. And if you said it, you knew you were. You didn't need to be told. But sometimes when you're told by one of your own players, that was it. So we policed ourselves from that point of view, but he oversaw the whole thing, and he was a great man, and we'd all have huge respect for him.
But you were competing as well, Don. You probably knew between yourselves that you had a good quality team, and when you're kind of winning things, if you come in with that attitude, you want to stick together. If you're losing all the time and getting heavy defeats, you can go the other way if you come in with that attitude.
Well, there was, like, I mean, people kind of at times look back and say, oh, you were a wild bunch and this, that and the other. I mean, we won 4 Leinster Senior Championships, a National League, you know, 2 All-Irelands, lost a couple of All-Irelands, you know, over an 8-year period. It was actually a really successful team. What we didn't have, and Michael Dignan would always say this, what we didn't have was what you guys had, the ruthlessness to want to win it every year. Like, I don't think, many of us may have had it. Some of us may have said, if you won one, it was the celebrations. We carried them on a bit, all right.
Did you have it?
Oh, when I play, well, you see, the difficulty was I had no balance. I had very little balance. So I'd have no problem in tuning into the demands. I mean, you wouldn't have won what you did with Burren Offaly unless you did. But the difficulty I had was knowing kind of when to stop celebrating, and it would carry on and carry on and it'd carry on. And it cost me an All-Ireland in '98 because we won a Club All-Ireland with Burr, a great Club All-Ireland. And it was a really emotional one because Joe Early was captain and his father had died in the stand during the semi-final against Delos, Clarecastle. Draw, extra time, replay, and we bet Sarsfields in the final. And I was in the best shape, playing great hurling, and I didn't stop celebrating. And Offaly went on and won the All-Ireland in '98, and Éamonn, Michael Bond came in. Babs was so good to me, recognised I had an issue at the time, and I hadn't stopped, you know. And Babs was so helpful to me. He really did, and says, you know, I can help you out here. And I didn't want to stop. You know, I didn't know when to stop celebrating. And Michael Bond came in and he was brilliant, and he had me down trying to get the best out of me again. And I was getting back into it, but I shouldn't get back in time. And that was it. And then when the panel got together for the All-Ireland, you know, I wanted to be part of the outer panel. And they did the right thing, and they went, no, you know, you're not part of it, and that was it. Yeah. So
where were you the day of the final?
I was up in the stand looking at it, and the following morning I was in Castlebar for a meeting, but I deliberately set a meeting in Castlebar for the Monday, win, lose or draw, because I said, you can't turn and point the fingers, and I was a great fella at that, and everybody else for your failures. This is one that, and I often thought about this, it's something that could have haunted me in life.
Yeah.
You know, missing out on that All-Ireland because of my own fault, because I overindulged for too long. But I parked it straight away, and I said to myself, I have to, because this thing can eat you up going forward. And I did, and I parked it. And I never revisited it, ever revisited it, because it could eat away. So I was the author of my own downfall by missing out on that All-Ireland. And the rest of the boys knew it, because they all wanted me there. You know, I'd hurled with them all the way through, and I was good enough, and I'd have been on the team if I minded myself, but I didn't. So I had no one to blame.
Yeah.
So I don't look back in anger, as the song goes, to be honest with you. It was my own fault. I got what I got out of it, and I deserved what I got out of it. And what I missed, I got what I deserved that year as well. So no regrets like that.
I'd imagine you'll get a good reception tomorrow when you all go out onto the pitch. Do you know if Éamonn Cregan will be there?
No, he's not. He won't be there. No, unfortunately, we'd have loved if he did, but he's his own man, and that's.
You'd have so many questions from him. It's been so long, probably, since you've spoken to him.
I've met him a few times at a couple of golf outings type of thing, but you know, he's not an easy man to talk to, and I don't mean that in any disrespect. He's a wonderful man, and we have just our memories of him are a man who brought us to the high altar of hurling, and we're just so grateful for him. Would we have got there without him? I don't know. Would we? To be honest with you, it's arguable we wouldn't have without him.
We'll enjoy it tomorrow.
We will.
I'm sure you'll have a good day and a good evening.